think people get so kind of caught up in like, oh, I have to just build a massive following in order to have a successful business. Obviously that helps, but you don't have to start there.
Once you've established the values in your business, you attract the right people into your business.
Yeah.
You attract the right speakers. You attract the right people into your community. So values are at the core.
And the idea is something that brings life, and it's something that is beneficial for not just you, but for community, for others. That's a good sign that it's likely something that would be from God.
Welcome back, every one of our listeners here to CATAMANIA. I have with me here today in Vancouver, Miss Danielle Wiebe. Wiebe, is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Want to make sure I pronounce it properly. And if you could kindly, our wonderful listeners, give us thumbs up or press whatever like button is on the platform that you're listening to this on. Greatly appreciate it. Without further ado, we're going to launch straight into it. Hi, Danielle.
Hi.
Nice to have you on.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me, Christina.
Thanks for being here. Tell me a little bit about how you started and how you managed to, I mean, from what I've seen of what you do is like put on these phenomenal, amazing events, connecting people. What's your story?
Yeah, so thank you. 12 years ago, started my first business, and that was when I was still in university and just trying to figure life out. And I sort of stumbled into entrepreneurship. I actually was studying business while I was going to school, and so knew that I wanted to eventually own my own business one day, but didn't think that I would while I was still in school. But it worked out to start a business with a business partner. And so during that time, navigating all the things of starting your own business, like how to get clients and how to network and connect with other people. And so I started networking a lot. And so I would go to Vancouver. I would go to these like networking events and try to connect with people. And if I'm honest, like I always felt like the odd one out. I was normally one of the youngest people in the room and usually one of the only women. And so that sort of just like planted a seed, I think, for me of, like I couldn't really find anything that I was looking for as far as like a group or a community of women who were building businesses, who were wanting to connect and collaborate and learn from each other. And so I would meet people here or there, like at those events. And so I'd stay in contact. At that time, like Instagram, if you can believe it or not, was like just getting started. People were just starting to like use it for business. I remember those
times.
Crazy times. And it was like, you're taking pictures of your food and putting a filter on it and all that kind of stuff. And so, but I really saw a huge opportunity to use Instagram and obviously all social media platforms for business. And so actually the business that I had started was specifically to do that for other brands. So at the time, it was mostly actually Facebook, like Facebook pages. And at that time, like Facebook pages were just blowing up. So I was like, well, I know exactly kind of the strategy on how to like start up a Facebook group and then get a bunch of people to like it right away, start to create some content that's going to get engagement. And so that's what I did for my business for a couple of years. And then, honestly, I was just working from home and just feeling super like lonely. And at that time I was doing other things too. I actually started working for my mom. My mom is entrepreneur as well, was an entrepreneur. She's not working now, but she really inspired me as well. And I come from a family of business owners and entrepreneurs. My Opa actually moved to Canada when he was 19 years old, started a business here in Canada, and then built that business. And so I think it was just like always in my blood. And
does it get passed down through DNA, you think? Is it a thing?
Honestly, I wonder, because I think it's a few things. I think there's part of that. And then I think there's also what you see, right? Like growing up, I always saw my parents, my dad had the business that was passed down to him, and then my mom, starting her business. And it was just really cool to see them creating things and running things and making decisions. And I think I was always inspired by that. And so, yeah, I felt really lonely though in my journey because there was not a lot of other people that I knew of at the time that were sort of in my stage that were growing businesses as well. And so I started going for coffee with people. Like I would find them on Instagram. I'd be like, oh, this person's doing something cool. Like, let me message them and just ask if they want to go for coffee. Like, I would basically be like, hey, can I take you for coffee? Let's get to know each other. I want to know like what you're up to and how I could maybe support you and all of that. And so I started going for coffee with people, and it was like basically like a coffee date every day or every other day for like a year.
Yeah.
And so I built up a group of people who I would just kind of stay in contact with. And I was like, wow, this is so valuable. So I was like, I'm going to host an event and just see what happens. And so I hosted my first event, brought together, I think there was like maybe 10 of us in the room, if that. And then at the end of the night, someone came up to me. They're like, okay, well, when's the next one? I'm like, okay, I guess I'll get planning
It's
on
already
that.
in the making.
I'm like, yeah, I'll let you know. Like, stay tuned.
Yeah.
So that was really the catalyst, I think, for really creating this kind of community. And it started with just in-person events, pop-up events. Then it turned into workshops. Then it turned into larger networking events, and we'd have a panel of speakers. We'd bring in people. And for me, it was always important to like collaborate, right? And that was the huge piece of what I felt like created a lot of the success, especially in the beginning stages, is I would collaborate with women who were a lot more knowledgeable, established than me. But that I felt like I could bring value to, right? A lot of these people also felt disconnected and also felt lonely and wanted an opportunity to share what they had learned in their journeys. And so I created a platform and a stage for them to share those things. So there was a lot of collaboration, and then through that they would share it with their community. So it was just kind of a ripple effect from
Yeah.
there. And so yeah, over the past, I would say like 10 years, yeah, it's been 10 years now. It's just like grown and evolved and like over time. And so I think that's the journey.
Was the intent for you to make it into a business, or was that something that you started off?
You know what? At first, I didn't know what it was. It was more so, I know this is valuable. I know this is something that I want for myself.
Mhm.
And so it started there. And then as I started to host these events, also recognizing the cost that comes along with, putting these things together and all the time and attention that I was taking also away from, at the time, other things that I was doing.
Mhm.
I was like, wow, this is actually like a full on thing. Like this I'm spending like full-time hours doing this.
Yeah.
Let's figure out how to monetize it and make it something that could be sustainable for me. And so that was kind of the journey of that aspect as well. And then, yeah, I mean, during COVID, right? That's a huge part of my story. We were actually at the height of our success. So we actually ended up launching into 5 different cities across North America. We had a chapter in Toronto. We had a chapter in Vancouver, of course, Victoria, Seattle, and San Diego. And so we had events happening in all these different cities. We had chapter leaders for all these cities. And then COVID happens and everything needs to be shut down.
Boom.
So that was, yeah, obviously, I know for a lot of other people too, probably one of the hardest seasons, especially if you had a business that was very in-person based. But yeah, we lost like 80% of our revenue overnight. Thankfully, at that time, we had a little bit happening online, but not much. And so I was like, okay, well, this is the time. Like, we need to figure out like how we're going to make this sustainable online. And so we started hosting virtual events. I ended up launching my podcast during that time and really revamped the online aspect of the community that we had built. And so, I know it seems cheesy to say this, but it really was like a huge blessing in disguise of like our business would not be where it is today if that didn't happen. Because I think I would have just gone down this route of like, let's just open up more chapters, more in person. It was also challenging because it was taking so much of my time. Like my time was split between like supporting and managing all these different chapters. And so we ended up kind of closing down those chapters and just really focusing on the online community and the local community here in Vancouver. And now we've had people that have like flown in for events here. And we have a lot of people who are not local to Vancouver, but they're still a part of our online community, which is really cool. So yeah, I'm grateful for that time because it was like so difficult, but it forced me to be like, how are we going to make this work long term? And also like, what do I want the community and the business to look like, 10 years from now, rather than thinking like, what are the next 6 months going to look like? And I think that's the way that my brain was thinking about things up until that point. And so everything was very reactive. Everything was very, what do we need to do so that, the next month, like we can make things work in the next month. And so I started thinking more like long-term and sustainable. And so that was a huge shift for the brand and the business.
With all the darkness that it brought and all the craziness that was happening, I feel like it definitely, if you chose to see it that way, so it sounds like you, obviously, you were devastated by the fact that now you have to completely halt some of the stuff that you were doing.
Yeah.
But your mindset was like, oh, okay, well, I better figure this out, and adjust to what's going on.
Yeah.
And so many people, lost their jobs. And then they were like, you know what? I didn't really feel like doing that anyway. So maybe I should look into something else. So I feel like if you are able to maintain that mindset through those times of like, oh, well, I better adjust, things will be okay,
And really, you have to. And I think even just things that happen in the world that are not as dramatic, I think, as, a global pandemic, but things are always changing. Like things are always shifting and evolving. And I think that if we get so stuck in like the way we've always done things or the way that we feel comfortable doing things, then we're going to miss out on so much opportunity. And so for me, that's been my mindset of like, okay, well, this is happening. This is changing, shifting in the industry or just in businesses in general. And so I need to figure out how can I learn more? Like, for example, AI, it's like, okay, well, how do I learn about it? How do I engage with it? What are my value systems around it as well? And how do I want to incorporate it or not incorporate it into my business? Because it's here. That's not going away. Like it's not like it's.
What are your thoughts on that? Are we going to be okay
man.
or are we screwed?
I
go in phases. One day I'm like, whoa, this is amazing. And then another day I'm like, we're fucked.
Yeah. I think, you know what? What I've recognized, and I mean, I think there's a lot of different reasons why my brain thinks this way. I think a lot of it has to do with my faith, but then also the way I was raised is like, I tend to have a really optimistic mindset of like, there's a reason for everything that's happening. And even though there's things that happen that are like, we can't deny that evil exists in our world. Yeah. We can't deny that there's things that happen that are completely devastating. But I think when we can have a mindset of, okay, there is a plan and like there's a plan for my life, there's a plan for what's happening. And like, how can I look at this as like an opportunity for growth, an opportunity for connection, an opportunity to do things differently. When we go through, and I don't know what you think about this, but like sometimes the most challenging moments in your life are like the times when your character is developed the most.
Yeah.
And even though we wish we didn't have to go through it, that's when truly like our character is built and our resilience is built.
100%. Yeah.
And even our empathy for other people. Yeah. And so, yeah, I think back to like some of the hardest moments in my life. And I think, those were the moments that really made me into the person that I am today. And I'm grateful for them in some ways. And so even though we want to live a life that's like full of abundance and no challenges,
But like, do
Yeah.
we? Like, ideally, obviously, but at the same time, I guess what you're saying,
Yeah.
I was reflecting on that a lot, and it's the whole idea of like, without the bad, would there be good? Like, would we know the good if we didn't have the
Yeah.
bad?
Yeah.
It's, and of course, some things you wish would never
Would never
happen,
happen.
but
Yeah.
sometimes it's like, this whole argument of like, well, why does the darkness even exist? It's like, well, probably because we wouldn't know the light without it. You know what I mean? Not to sound
Yeah.
super cheesy right now, but
Yeah.
like a lot
Yeah.
of those things, if you talk to someone who has gone through an illness, for example,
Yeah.
and they recovered from it,
Yeah.
so many times you talk to them about it and they'll say, it's like one of the best things that ever happened to me
Yeah.
because I came out of it. And now looking back, like that's what formed my character and that's
Yeah.
what developed me into who I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's a tricky question because I don't think we'll ever fully be able to answer it. I don't think anyone
No.
has like the right answer. I think, yeah, I mean, like I said, I have like a strong faith in God. And I think not everyone believes the same thing.
Mhm.
But like for me, it's like I have to recognize that like in this life, there's a lot of things that I just will not understand. And there's a lot of things that like my brain cannot fully comprehend. I think a lot of us think we want to know everything, or it's like, okay. And of course I believe in like learning and growth and opportunity, but it's also like there's some things that just like our brains were not meant to know, and that our brains weren't meant to like fully comprehend, because we'd probably just mess it up.
Do
Like,
not lean on your own understanding.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And
Yeah.
I think we're so like, we want to be in control so bad. And I don't know. This is honestly so relevant for me, especially right now. I'm like going through a season where I feel like God's teaching me like, you want to be in control so bad, but like you don't know the whole picture. It's like a random character in a story trying to like figure out the whole plot line when like the director's like, listen, I've got it. Like, this is the plan. And then they're like, no, but I want control. And it's like, you don't even know what's going on.
Yeah.
So I'm learning that really, like, I feel like I've gone through a season recently where I've really just reflected on that. I've always known it, but it's like when you're going through things, you really like know it.
Yeah. And
So
your feeling changes towards it because you deep
yeah.
down could know it, but then you still feel like you need to control something.
Yeah.
So what's the exercise or something that you do to let go of that control and I guess surrender in a way?
Such a good question. I think for me, prayer, it's like, yeah, surrender. And yeah, for me, it's like reading scripture, prayer. Also just like recognizing that like I'm imperfect. Like we assume like, oh, if I knew everything and I had all the like power or whatever. And, so many of our conflicts in our world are like, well, if I were in charge, I would do it this way. And, but everyone has a different perspective. So like, isn't that interesting that like we all think if we were in charge, we would do it better, but yet someone else
That's actually a good point.
Like who has a completely different version of like what's like right and wrong and all this kind of stuff, they think they would do it better. So just recognizing the humanness that we all experience and recognizing that we're not perfect, and letting go and recognizing that we have a plan. And that doesn't mean that we just sit back and do nothing. Like we're given, like, I believe we're given gifts and we're given like specific assignments. And so we need to move on those things. It's not that we just sit back and we're lazy and we do nothing. We have assignments and we have things we want to do. And then at the same time, we need to know like, well, when are we going to rest? When are we going to like pray and like the things that are super important to us, spending time with family, like refilling our own cup, like. So, I mean, I'm learning that like right now, having 2 kids, a husband, a business, a big vision for like what I want to see. And, yeah, it's a lot. Right. So then for me, I'm like, well, I can't do this all on my own. that's impossible. Like and if I try to put all the pressure on my own shoulders, that's when things start to break down for me. So
yeah, I want to go back to that pressure in a moment and
yeah.
delegating and all of that. But before we do, how much do you believe what you've, chosen to do in life and what you're doing in your decision making, how much of that is guided by your faith? And also, how do you, it kind of ties into this question, but how do you know what you're supposed to do? You're saying we have assignments. How do you know exactly what path you're supposed to take? Everybody's like, well, I want to know. I don't know what I want to do. I don't know what I want to do. How do you find that out?
Such a good question. And I think for me, there's been seasons of my life, to answer your first question, there's been seasons of my life where I've been very like surrendered and been like, okay, God, like whatever you'd have me to do, I'm going to do it. And
I
like,
am your servant. Please tell me what to do.
Like, tell me what to do. And that has been some of the sweetest seasons of my life. Not to say that it hasn't been hard, because there's been really challenging moments in that. But like, I'm at peace. Like, quite honestly, I can tell you that the moments that I've strayed from that and the moments where I've been like, okay, taking it back in my own hands, like I know better, or I don't know, like I don't think God actually truly wants what's best for me, so I'm going to go and like do my own thing. Those have been the seasons that have been the most, I would say I've experienced the most anxiety, the most confusion, the most like
uneasiness.
Yeah, just like and feeling like everything's like I said this before, all the pressure is on me. And we were not meant to hold that, because if we like hold all the pressure and all like the things that we feel like we need to accomplish or do, like that like breaks us. Like we're not meant to hold all of that. And so for me, it's been, and I feel like now in the last like year, I've been like in a season of like letting go again and being like, okay, God, like take it all. Cause like,
please figure this out.
Do it. Yeah. I can't do it on my own. Like all these different pieces of like life and business and family. I'm like, I can't take that pressure. And I think there's so much that's wrapped into that. It's like how we care about how other people think of us, like what other people think of us, how we're perceived, our desires, our wants. There's so much wrapped into that. So it's complicated, right? Like what was your second question? I'm like, I feel like I got lost in that question.
No, they're kind of tied together. But I wanted to know how much of your own decisions were driven by faith, and how do you follow the path that you're meant to follow? So if you're in a situation where you feel like you don't know what to do, like you're in a job, somebody's listening to this and they're in a job they really don't like. They know they're not meant to do it. And they're like, oh my gosh, like Danielle's an entrepreneur. Look at the business that she started. How did you know that that's what you were meant to do? I also want to start a business, but I don't know what kind of business I should be starting.
Oh, such a good question. Okay, so for me, what I have found to be so valuable, and again, I'm going to bring my faith into this, is that I've basically prayed like, okay, God, I want your direction and I want clarity. Like a big thing that I always pray for is like clarity and direction, and also like wisdom, right? I think I really want to know like what is the best use of my time here, really, on earth, right? And so whenever I have been able to just like fully give that over, it doesn't always happen right away where I get that clarity. For example, I had been praying for clarity on the direction of my business for the past couple of years. And I had gotten glimpses of that clarity. Like I had gotten like glimpses of like, this is what it's going to look like and things like that.
And in what way do you get those glimpses?
I would say like in my own thoughts.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Or like I find like if I'm like in nature or if it's never when I'm scrolling on my phone. So there's that. But like anytime I'm like
Hint, hint.
disconnected,
Yeah.
like, going on a hike or like, by the ocean or whatever.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't even have to be that. It could be like in my own home, but like playing with my kids or
But
whatever.
it'll be like clear,
Yeah,
like
clear
thought
like
or
idea.
visual. Okay. Yeah.
And sometimes I'm like, is this my idea or is this God's idea? And who knows? But it's like, I think we get so caught up in that so for me, I'm like, okay, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start taking action. I'm going to start like going down this like from this idea. By the way, I believe that if an idea comes to you and the idea is something that brings life and it's something that is beneficial for not just you, but for community, for others, that's a good sign
Mhm.
that it's likely something that would be from God. If it's something that's like only for your own like selfish ambition, it's probably you. Right? So
So it's
I
a good
think
test.
it's a
It's like,
good
what will this
test.
do if you pursue it?
Yeah.
Who will it benefit?
Who will it benefit? Exactly. And is it like, for me, it's like, is it in line with scripture? Is it in line with like what God has already said? And so that's a really good test. And again, sometimes I am not clear. And I think over the past like year, I've been like praying for clarity and all of this. And then there was a moment actually in November where I got like a clear like, ooh, okay, this is the direction. This is the new, we're going through a rebrand right now. Like this is the new name of the business. And it felt like so clear. And I was so excited. I was like journaling. It was like one of those moments I like got out a blank piece of paper and I was just like writing. And it felt so good. And then I'm like, okay, I'm going to start taking steps forward in this direction. And how I think about it is that you start taking action and then sometimes got to like course correct you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like, okay, we're taking action. And then it's like, oh, okay, you're going off course a little bit. Like, let's bring you back. But it's really like that relationship that you have with God. Like if you're in prayer, if you're like reading scripture, like that's when the clarity is going to come. It's not necessarily just like trying to find it on your own, if that makes sense.
In fact, I feel like
yeah.
for me personally, what I've noticed is when I try to find it, like when I'm like, come on, give me the answer,
Yeah.
Or like, where? Is there a sign? Is
Yeah,
there,
let me look at a sign.
Let me look around.
somewhere.
Maybe
Yeah,
there's a
yeah.
sign. There's a car that's going to drive by and,
Yeah.
you're never going to get it. You get it when you completely almost like let go of it. You ask and then you just forget about it.
Yes, that's so
and then
good.
it comes in the moment when you least expect it. And it'll be the weirdest moments sometimes when you're not thinking about it at all, but that's the key, because I feel like in those moments is when you feel that true level of trust, because when you're constantly seeking it all the time and you're trying to find it and you're forcing an answer into like existence, you're not really trusting. You're not
so
trusting the
true.
timing. You're not trusting the process. You're just forcing that answer to appear in front of you. But definitely, I agree with you. It never comes when you're scrolling on your phone. It comes when you're doing something that is completely unrelated to like technology or anything like that. It's just
And I think for me too, what you said was so powerful because we have our own like timelines on when we think things should happen.
Mm-hmm.
And then going back to what I said before about us being like finite human beings where we don't know everything. We're not like, if you actually think about like how small we are in comparison to like the universe, like God created
we're so big.
We think we're so like important, and then we are. And like, and the thing is, like, we're loved by God. Like, we are important for sure, and our lives matter. But there's a massive story that's unfolding that is bigger than us. And so when we think like, I don't know, we think we know the right timing for things. We know, and I think about this so much now that I have kids. I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. And it's like they want something so bad and they want it now. And it's like, listen, like you'll have that eventually, but right now is not the best time for you to have that, right? And so God's the same with us. Like he knows what's good for us and what's not. Like if you want to know how we relate to God, like think about children and like how they just think about the short term. They're not thinking about the long-term effects of like, if I have a cookie first thing in the morning, like that's probably not going to be the best thing for me. But you could have it maybe after dinner, after you've had like, nutrition for the day or whatever. And I think it's just recognizing that, yeah, there's a bigger plan for us and we're just a part of that plan. And so if we can stay engaged and stay like in relationship with God and like hearing from him, then we can step into the story that he's already creating instead of trying to like create our own story where like, I don't know, it's kind of like funny, but like main character energy. Like we all want that, right?
Yeah.
We're like, I'm the main character of my own story. And it's like,
but it comes from that trust, from realizing and letting go of your own timelines. I agree with you, which is the hardest thing to do. I know it's way
so
easier
hard.
said than
It's
done because
so
you're like, well,
hard.
I want it now.
I know.
And the interesting thing is also when you let go of that is what I've noticed in my own life. I love talking about this stuff so much.
Yeah. It's
But
so fun.
I noticed that if I let go and completely just, I pray and I just let go of the timelines or relinquish personal will, my personal will, it happens almost instantly in most cases.
Yeah,
but when I'm obsessing over it and I'm like, well, it's got to happen by August or it's got to happen by September. It's like, no.
Yeah. And I think too, like sometimes we're not ready for what we're asking for. Like we're just not ready for it. Our character isn't developed enough. We're not in the right place in our, like, we're not in the right headspace. We're not in the right season. And I think about too, this like clarity that came for like, even like my business and all these things that I had been praying for and asking for, like 2 years. It was finally like, oh, okay, I get it. Like I get why I couldn't get that clarity right away because it wouldn't have worked at that season of my life because I hadn't gone through like the past couple years. I went through a few just different challenges personally and in the business that like really developed my character that I was like, I would not have been ready for it earlier. And yeah, I hope God continues to develop my character as I age and get older and hopefully wiser, so that I'm ready for more, so that I'm ready for like not necessarily a bigger assignment on paper, but just more of the things that he wants to do through me. And I hope I can do that. So I think patience is really it's so hard. It really is so, so hard. And I struggle with that so much. It's like ingrained in so many of us that we want results and we want them yesterday.
Yeah.
And we're not willing to like do the hard work and know that like what we're doing today might not show up it might not show up tomorrow. It might not show up a month from now. It could show up like 10 years from now.
Yeah.
The fruit of what we're like, the seeds that we're planting now might not bloom for years to come.
Yeah.
We have no idea.
And what I've noticed is every time I look back on my life, in moments when I thought, oh, how could this happen now? And why is this happening now? And the timing is but every time you look back on like the years of whatever it is that you were experiencing, it all happened at the perfect time.
Yeah.
You just at that time couldn't see the bigger picture. You couldn't see yourself 5 years from now, 10 years from now. Now that you can, you look back and you're like, wow, this makes perfect sense. Oh, and by the way, that experience totally connects the dots with this one and then this one and this one and this one. And now here I am. Exactly. But you can't see it in the moment. And it's very hard in that moment when you're going through something to be like, one day it'll make sense. You have to, but it's, it's easier said than done.
And sometimes we're protected from things that we think we want so bad. And then we recognize later, like, I don't know, think back to like, this is like a tangible thing, but like you think back to like relationships that you had when you were young and you're like, oh, this person's going to be my forever, like whatever. And then you break up and it's like the worst thing. You're devastated and think your whole life is falling apart. And then you realize like,
now you look
wow,
back, you're like, oh,
I'm
thank
being
God.
But like you're being protected from like so much. I think about that so often too, is just like, wow, like if I wouldn't have like waited for like, my husband to come along, like if I would have been with that person who I wanted so badly, like that would have turned out horribly for me.
Yeah.
And I'm just so grateful that like the thing that I wanted then was not given to me.
Yeah. You could even take it to the extent of, I have friends who've been in accidents and then they find out that, one of my friends was on the way to the airport and then something happened at the airport and she was like, oh, turns out this accident was kind of meant to happen so that I don't get to the airport. But you know what I mean? It's all these things that we just don't see them. We don't know what we're being protected from, for sure.
Yeah.
How much has your faith changed since becoming a mother? I really love the analogy that you made. We're like children, basically.
Yeah.
Because then it all starts to make sense of how these things work.
It does. Oh, man. I think, well, first and foremost, I think becoming a mother has challenged me in so many different ways because my life is no longer just about myself and my own wants and desires and things like that. Like, it's about these now 2 human beings who I'm like, I have this responsibility now to like, be a good mom and to like instill in them like good qualities and to speak life into them and all of these things. So there's that responsibility piece that has been like, okay, I don't want to be lazy in developing my own faith and my own character because my kids are the ones that would benefit or not from the decisions that I'm making. So there's like I feel like a huge responsibility that that I have now. And then also, yeah, like you said, having that relatability of like, wow, it's so funny when I'm like so frustrated at like my kids. Like, why can't you understand this? And it's just like sometimes my daughter's now 4 and she is so sweet and she's so fun. And she also has a very strong personality. And so like sometimes we're like this and like, yeah. And she'll say things I'm like, I get so triggered and I'm so like, ugh. And then I'm like, wow, it's like a reflection of like, it's almost like God's being like, do you see now? Like,
Yeah.
do you see now how sometimes like you think you want something or you are like so stubborn on like, this is what I need, this is what I want, when it makes no sense at all, even though you're convinced that it makes total sense. Like sometimes my daughter will say things and like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Like it doesn't make, but in her mind,
Right.
it does make sense, right? And so I have to be patient and loving and like, okay, sweetie, like I know you think you want this and that I get that, but like we've got to be patient here and we've got to, and like that's like how God relates to us.
Yeah.
And I'm like, it's so beautiful. Like when you really think about like how God relates to us as his kids, it's like, wow, like that is so special.
I've heard from many of my friends that like having kids is a very spiritual experience.
Yeah.
Like from the moment of conception pretty much up
Yeah.
until, you're raising them, which makes perfect sense, you know, that there's like a switch. I recently saw a video where it was like I don't know who it was, but it was on a podcast somewhere. This gentleman was saying how like a lot of people who don't like believe in God, they have kids and they're like, whoa. No.
Yeah.
I believe now, because just to go through that is kind of like a miracle type of thing, right?
It is a miracle.
Yeah.
And you think about all the things that have to line up for a child to actually be birthed into this world. It's like, how could that how could that happen without there being a God? Like, it doesn't make any sense, really. Like, if you really, truly think about it, you're like, there's no way this is all, like, just chance.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I can understand that. Like, there's so many pieces of, like, yeah, and even just, like, giving birth and, like, just what a wild experience that is. And how our bodies then like heal themselves. It's like, what the heck? Like, it's crazy. It's so wild.
Did you ever have like a drive that almost got like reborn after giving birth? I hear so many women say that they give birth and they're like, whoa, if I could do this, I could do anything else I put my mind to.
Honestly,
did you have that?
Yeah. Yeah. I can relate to that of like, because it's like one of the hardest things physically that you will go through. And then you're like, whoa, like you do feel like empowered in a lot of ways. I think for me also, it was like a redirection of priorities. And then also there were so many things before I had kids that I worried about or that I like would stress about, or even just like the opinions of other people, like just so many things that would kind of just be in the back of my mind. And then after I had kids, so many of those things like didn't matter anymore. Like I don't really
Did
care.
the opinion of other people go down in your
Down
care list? Yeah.
100%. And like, it's not that it's not there. Of course, we're human. We're always going to somewhat care what other people think about us. We want to be liked and accepted. We
Yeah.
want to belong. But like, just little things that would like give me anxiety or like make me feel a certain way, like that was kind of gone. It was almost like I didn't have capacity to even think about that anymore. And it was like, doesn't matter. I don't care.
The things
anymore.
that I thought mattered a lot don't matter anymore.
Don't matter. And like how many followers on Instagram or like just little things in the business that were such like vanity things that like I cared about so much before I had kids. And after kids, I was like, I don't care. Like I honestly don't care. Like I want to make an impact with my business and I want to like be able to make money so that I can like pour back into like stuff my family wants to do and like giving back to community. Like I want to make a lot of money so I can do those things. Like that's still there. But it's like I don't actually care about like all the things that are the vanity as much. I won't say not at all.
We all have an ego, right?
Of course. But it's like I care less. And I think the more also like I engage with my faith, like those things kind of fall to the wayside because it's like, who cares? This is all temporary anyway. So yeah.
Of course.
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about money a little bit.
Okay.
You know, because
let's do it.
it's something that I realized after moving to Canada. Canadians in general, I guess because we're so related to the British here, I found Canadians are very reserved and there's certain subjects that just people don't discuss.
They're awkward about.
Yeah. Money is one of them.
Yeah.
And I think, I mean, obviously there are certain things that are polite, not polite, like you shouldn't ask kind of thing. But what's your take on how much, mindset matters? How you also, you said that at first you kind of started, you didn't really know what you were starting exactly. And then there was a point where you were like, okay, I need to monetize this. So how did you monetize it? How did it become a legit business?
That's a great question. So I think to speak to, before I get into that, to speak to like the whole thing about money. And I think there's also something around like women talking about money. People feel uncomfortable with it or they feel like they shouldn't want to make money. Like it's almost like we feel like we're not supposed to even want to make money, which is so funny because it's like money is just a resource that we can use to either buy things or to give to organizations that we're passionate about. Like the more money and the more resources that we have, the more we can like circulate that. And it's actually like a really good thing.
And it's a means of exchange.
It's a means of exchange.
All it is. If we didn't have money, we would do gold, sheep, like, cows, whatever.
Exactly. We would trade things. And so I think, and so for me to answer that question around the business, it was like trying to figure out, okay, how can I monetize this so that I can create this sustainability going forward? And that, because I really wanted to actually focus on that aspect, like the community aspect of my business, because I had these other things, but nothing like lit me up. Like this community was lighting me up. Like I wanted to work on it at like, 10 p.m. at night. And I was like, working on it and like so excited to do that. And I was like, I didn't feel that with the other things. So I knew there was like this pull of like, but at the time it wasn't making money.
Right.
So I was like, okay, so how can I actually make it so that it is? Because I saw other examples of different business models that were able to monetize. I was like, so it's possible. I just now need to figure out how can I do that for myself. So, I mean, a big thing I think that's really important to mention here is like, look for other like proof that what you're trying to do exists. Just because if you can't find exact proof, that's okay. It could be something similar that like, okay, this person's been able to monetize in this way, so I know somehow it's possible. And then seek out support and help and mentorship and community yourself. So, for me, that looked like hiring a coach. That looked like joining other communities, mostly at the time online, because like I said, there wasn't really much, especially, 10 years ago in Vancouver, but I would look for these online communities. I would also talk to people who lived in Vancouver and just kind of bounced around ideas. So
Are you
really,
extroverted by nature?
I am,
Yeah.
but then I'm also, I think I'm like, there's like
Ambivert? Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm that.
Yeah,
Because
okay,
I
yeah.
love being around people and I
Yeah.
love connecting, but then I also need time. Like I need days where I can just like be by myself.
I wanted to ask that because I feel like a lot of people who listen to this be like, this all sounds great, but like I'm introverted, so I can't
Yeah.
just go out and like talk to people. But I feel
That's a
like
good point though.
Yeah.
I think you have it in like pockets of time,
Yeah.
if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So how I've tried to figure out my schedule, and this has changed since I've had kids as well, how I've tried to set up my schedule is I have certain days where no one can book meetings or calls with me. And I'm not doing anything outside of the house. So if I wanted to, I could just like be in my house and just be like by myself. And we have like part-time childcare. So I have part-time where I can work on my business. But I usually try to reserve at least 2 days a week or 3 that I don't have any meetings or in-person connection. Those are like my like restorative days that I can like regenerate my energy to.
Time management. So you make a point to schedule everything, manage your time. Yeah, of course.
So when I'm saying all these things, it sounds overwhelming for sure, but it's like that's in pockets of time. So say, for example, you decide, okay, you know what? Going forward, every Friday afternoon, I'm going to try to connect with someone out for coffee, or I'm going to try to, you know, be a part of something online where I'm connecting with people. So like really try to pocket your time, but be intentional with that time when that time is connection or getting mentorship, or because if you might think like, oh, I'm an introvert. You still need community.
Of course.
Like we all need community. And it's actually a really good example of a girl who's in our community. She's amazing. She's the one doing our website right now. And she was talking about how she was like a lone wolf for the first 2 years of her business. And she thought like she could just kind of do it on her own. And then she didn't realize the massive opportunity that she was leaving on the table of collaborating with other entrepreneurs. So like when she joined our community, she all of a sudden connected with another photographer in our community, someone who does SEO, someone who does like all these other things. And now they're like referring each other and bouncing around ideas. And it's just like, she didn't recognize what she was missing out on.
The brain power of just having that. Yeah.
So I would just encourage anyone that if you think like, oh, I'm an introvert, so this doesn't apply to me, like it does.
It does, yeah.
You can still do it in pockets of your time. But yeah, so I would say that's what I really did to figure out, okay, how can I monetize? And then there's different ways to monetize. So was I going to have it as like a full-on membership right away where people would join a membership and then get access to the events? So we actually only started our membership, I think it was about 5 years ago or 6 years ago. So up until that point, it was just ticketed events and workshops. And then we also had sponsorships. So we would do people would purchase tickets to our events, and then also we would have sponsors sponsor our events. So they would either pop up as vendors or sponsors, and so they would get that extra exposure. And so that's really the way that we monetized for the first, I would say, 4 or 5 years. Then we turned it into, we had different opportunities. So we had like a program that we ran for a certain amount of time. And then we also did a membership. And now we have both. So we have our membership, we have ticketed events, and we also do partnerships, brand partnerships, sponsorships, that kind of thing. So, yeah.
So you figured out a way to monetize your business by watching how someone who had done something similar had monetized it in the past, right?
Yeah. And getting ideas. And then figuring out how do I want to apply that to my own business? Because it could look slightly different, but it gave me a good structure to like move forward with.
Do you think anything can be monetized? Like if somebody's starting something as a hobby and it's a lot of times people will say, well, I'm just doing this for myself. I'm just doing this for myself. And then it turns into something bigger. And then they're like, whoa, you know, this is like you were mentioning in the beginning. It's like, this is what I'm doing full time now.
Yeah.
It would be nice if I could figure out a way to monetize it.
Make money. I think for sure. I think the question to ask is, do you want to monetize it? So obviously there's certain aspects of like if you have a hobby, for example, that you really love, yes, it's really cool if you can monetize it, but do you want to monetize that aspect of your life? So I think as someone who has a very entrepreneurial brain, sometimes it can be like, oh, I have this hobby. How can I monetize it? And then I'm
Yeah.
like, I don't need to monetize it. Like, I have my business. Like, let me just like make money there. And this I
That's
can
a
just
great
do for
quality to have,
fun.
though, you know? Like, the brain that constantly looks at ways to monetize, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. But I think too, like sometimes we just need things to just be hobbies.
Mm.
So I think it's asking yourself, is this something I would want to do full time and have people pay me for it? If the answer is yes, then absolutely figure out. I'm sure that if you have any type of hobby, I'm sure there's some examples. Just do Google search, ask GPT, like, like ask, like, what are some examples of other people who have monetized this specific hobby or passion? And sometimes if you're like, well, I don't even know what my passions are, I try to get people to think back to like when you were little, what were the things that you like love to do? Just like
Mhm.
fun things that you used to just love to do. And how could you, like, that might give you some clues. And then asking like friends or family, what are some things that they would come to you for, or like advice that they would ask for you. So for me, like growing up, I always loved any type of event. Like I always loved when my family would get together. That was always super fun. And then, growing up and even being involved in like the business community and at my university and hosting, like I hosted a fundraiser, a part of that. And that was so much fun for me. So there's little clues, I think, that you can look to.
I like asking your friends because the
Yeah.
close people who are close in your life, what they come to you or what would they ask you for advice
Yeah.
for?
Yeah.
Because I feel like that speaks a lot to the things that maybe you ignore in yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it doesn't just have to be like, I think people get so kind of caught up in like, oh, I have to just build a massive following in order to have a successful business. Obviously, that helps, but you don't have to start there. And also, like, we have people in our community who don't even, like, aren't really even active on social media. They're just using referrals as a way to grow their own brand. So just thinking outside the box a little bit too. Obviously, social media is an amazing tool and we can use it to grow, but it doesn't have to be like the be all end all of everything.
No, there's so
So,
many businesses who have never even used social media
exactly.
still today. Like, yeah, don't get me
Exactly.
wrong, it's very helpful in many ways.
Yeah.
But also having a large following does not guarantee that you're making a
Yeah.
lot of money because
Exactly.
that's all it is. It's just numbers. It's how you use that, right? It's how
Yes.
if you're turning it into a business or if it's just something that you're, posting online. But
Yeah.
there's lots of businesses that aren't even involved on social media for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's looking into opportunities to collaborate too.
Yeah.
So even if you don't have a big, community of your own, but you can join a community or you have friends that already have like communities that they're a part of, like just look for what you have to get started
Yeah.
and then figure out how can you make it. This is the important part though, is like, how can you make it super beneficial for them? So I'm not a huge fan of like going and trying to just like get things from people just for whatever, right? And I'm sure
That's the bad side of networking that
yes.
I used to avoid any kind of networking event
Yes.
for the longest time because it just always felt like people are trying to
Trying
get
to
stuff
get
out of each other
things, yeah.
as opposed to just mingling and getting to know one
Mingling.
another. And then,
Exactly.
it's a
Maybe there's
more
opportunities that come from
Mhm.
that, like later
Yeah,
down the
and genuinely
road.
being interested. Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
So I think that's the important part is like make sure that you're not just going into relationships transactionally because people will feel
Yeah,
that.
of course.
So if you can really start with just like building connections, building relationships, building community, and then from there you might start to like open up opportunities. So, a lot of the connections that I made like over 10 years ago, there's things that are now coming to fruition today, and those are like connections that I made 10 years ago.
But they were
Um,
built on genuine
yeah,
interests and genuine,
exactly.
yeah.
And we've collaborated. Like I've had people like speak at our events or being a part of things. But I always try to make sure like, okay, well, why would they want to be a part of this? Like
Mhm.
thinking about it from their perspective on how can I make this so valuable that like it makes sense for them to say yes. Not to say they definitely will say yes. And, another thing people don't realize is like, people that are building businesses, like if they're going all in on it, like they're getting rejected a lot as
A
well.
lot.
So
Yeah.
like people don't recognize that like when we go to host an event and we're going to pitch like sponsorships and partnerships, and we're trying to book venues and we're booking speakers and like all this kind of stuff, like we get a lot of no's. And it's not just like, no, we don't want to be a part of what you're doing, but it's just like, it's not the right timing. It's not the right, like they already have a booked schedule. Like there's just so many aspects
Mhm.
of that. So being okay with being rejected, I think, you just kind of get used to it and then you don't really care. And knowing it's not about you, like it doesn't have any reflection on you. It's just,
It's just a no.
yeah,
That's all it
and that's
is.
fine.
I think so many people are scared of rejection.
Yes.
So how do you deal with it? You get used to it?
You get used to it. I think the more that
The more you get the
you
no, the
ask,
more you
yeah,
yeah.
the more that you ask and the more also just, okay, this is actually a really important one, is that you're not tying your identity to your business. Like, and if you're, it is what's really gets tricky is like, and I'm sure you probably experience this too because you've built a personal brand. And so like I feel like when I started building a personal brand too, I'm like, how do I like separate my identity with like, you know, it's hard, right?
Yeah.
But just knowing that like that's just one aspect of who you are. That's not the whole thing. Like you are not your online brand, you know? And recognizing that there's things that are so much deeper, even if you do share really vulnerably online, like there's things that are so much deeper that your community might not ever know. So not tying your identity to that, which is a tricky one.
That is a tricky one. Just as you said that, I was like, oh,
Yeah.
that's something I need to work on for sure because
It's
you get really attached to it.
you do. Yeah.
But yeah, you could lose yourself in it almost sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Because that's where also burnout could occur if you're too much into it and that
Yeah.
becomes your whole all-consuming thing.
Yeah. I think it's like a good there was a question that I think I heard on a podcast once, and it was something that I had to ask myself too. It was like, okay, if everything was gone tomorrow, like my social media accounts, my business, for whatever reason, just like disappeared, like, would I be okay? Like, obviously you're going to be sad. Obviously you're going to grieve loss, but like, would I be okay? Like, would I be able to just like still have like confidence in myself and still like be joyful in like other things that I have in my life? Like, I think it's a good question to ask yourself. And then
Mhm.
if your answer is like, well, no, I wouldn't be okay, then it's just like, okay, that's something to work on, right? And that was like a question that I asked myself. And I think that was also before I had kids too, where I was like, man, like that would really really wreck me. I need to check myself. Like, what am I putting my identity in? What am I getting my like meaning and joy and fulfillment in? I don't want it to just be in things that are not like ultimately important. So yeah.
That's a really important one.
Mm-hmm.
I want to ask you one final question because we're pretty much at our time here.
Yeah.
But you've built a community of it's women,
Yeah.
right? It's for women specifically. You managed to do it, it seems to me, like in a way where, well, A, there's collaboration.
Mm-hmm.
B, there's not this, because a lot of like, female-oriented or women's-only communities often tend to get very hateful of men. You don't have that at all. It's just like support of women because there's not
So good.
a
Yeah.
lot of that for women. So let's, but there's no negative connotation to any of it. And the collaboration piece seems to be so natural where, I don't know about you, but I've had in my life, like some of the most vicious hate that I've gotten has been from women. Some of the greatest support I've ever gotten has been from women as well. But some of the most vicious, like just stabbing painfully has also been from women. How did you manage to do that? That those, I mean, I believe that most of us are good, and it's just certain things that we do that are, maybe we're deviated from our path, right? And that's why people do those evil things. But you managed to somehow get those two together in a very perfect alignment.
Well, thank you for saying that. I
Mm.
appreciate that. I think it's been really important for me is for like values to be at the forefront of everything that we do. And like what you said about it not being negative towards men, because it's like, why? Like, why are we doing that? Like, why? And I think it actually exposes insecurity
Mm.
if we feel like we need to put down men in order to feel better about ourselves. And so I understand, that being said, I understand the frustration that women have felt. And obviously that's one of the reasons why I built the community that I built, is because I understand the feeling of not being or feeling like you don't fit in.
Mhm.
Especially in spaces like business spaces. And obviously there needs to be a lot of progression. I think we have progressed for sure. There needs to be a lot of progression as far as like women businesses getting funded and all these kind of things that are definitely important. But also like we need men need women, like we
Yeah.
both need each other. So what's the point in tearing down?
Yeah.
Like we're just basically doing that to them, and to be like, oh, we can do it to you too because we have felt like we've been not heard or not.
Yeah.
It's like that's not helping anything.
Then it's a never-ending cycle
It's a
of eye
never
for
ending
an
circle.
eye.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. So I think we need to just again, going back to the values, like for me, it's like I say this all the time in my community. I don't believe that you need to actually think of anyone as your competition. And I think it's so funny because competition is so ingrained into business. It's like,
Yeah.
those people are our competitions. How can we crush the competition?
How can we establish a monopoly and then
Yeah. I'm like, I don't care. Like I have collaborated with people that are my direct competition that offer the exact same resources, opportunities, maybe even as my community does. And I don't think of them as my competition. I'm like, let's collaborate because we probably have a lot of crossover. There's going to be people in your community that are better suited for my community and vice versa.
Mhm.
And so how can we actually just support each other? Because the thing is that going back to like the your path, like if I believe that if everyone's really like walking in their purpose, we're all going to be doing things in a different way. So there's space for everyone. Like it's not like God's like, oh, there's no space for you in here. Like it's like, no, like everyone belongs. And so collaboration and connection and community is like at the heart and center of what we do. I don't think there's any reason to have to be competitive. And again, like, I'm sorry you've experienced that. I know that like I've experienced it too. And a lot of people who are more public or, doing things
Yeah.
outside of the norm sometimes experience those like really, really hurtful messages or emails or even like, comments. And honestly, it's a reflection of where they're at. And unfortunately, it's usually because they don't feel confident in like what they're doing. Because if you have to go out of your way to say something negative or to try to tear someone down, you're obviously in a
Yeah.
negative place.
100%. You're not
So
walking
that's-
maybe in your path and you're frustrated.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you said
So-
about the values though, because it makes sense. Once you've established the values in your business, you attract the right people into your business. You
Yeah.
attract the right speakers. You attract the right people into
Yeah.
your community. So values are at the core.
Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining
Thanks
me.
for having me. I appreciate it.
it. And thank you so much for everyone, or to everyone, for tuning into this episode. I will see you next week.